there are no games that are quite like Bethesda games. Of course, when I say that, you and I, well, we both know that I'm lying, but also not really. Bethesda games aren't really known for doing any one specific thing the best, so outrageously fantastic that you need this totally new version of Skyrim, that you need to run through the main story of Fallout 3 for what feels like the 87th time, but people still do that. I've done that. I've lost count of how much I've played Skyrim, of how often I've seen a family member watch a Fallout lore video, hi mom, of lamenting how many mods I've installed incorrectly. Bethesda has, or I guess had would be a bit more accurate at this point in time, this unique grip on its fan base of seeming to know precisely what works in a game at a gameplay level. That's always been their problem. Bethesda's good when it comes to gameplay for the most part, the actual mechanics for how a game functions, to the point where their conversion of the Fallout VATS system from the original's turn-based format is now intrinsically tied to what people think of as VATS as a system forevermore. They make fun games, but not necessarily memorable ones. At least not memorable in a conventional sense. When Starfield was announced, I didn't really care. By that point, I'd grown disillusioned with both Bethesda itself and the games industry as a whole. In the case of Bethesda specifically, Fallout 76 was still fresh on my mind. I can be thankful that I could only experience that title's atrocious launch state vicariously through friends and family, since it was the rare, modern, mainline Bethesda game that I had neither purchased nor owned through some kind of giveaway. There was still a Starfield hype train, blowing its whistle every other hour right past my window, but I drowned it out with the hype train I was already on. Even with all of the people talking about it and advertisements on practically every website I so much as glanced at for a month prior to its launch, and Steam itself showcasing it on the homepage, and a friend saying how they were debating building a PC just to play Starfield, I didn't care. I don't want to be misconstrued here. I had a feeling that it would turn out as an alright game and was curious for the potential mods that would inevitably be coming as a result of its release, but I could never claim to be as excited for it as most people seem to be. It shouldn't be a surprise to say there's only really a select few games in the foreseeable future that I was at the time and still am genuinely excited about. Starfield was just never on the list. So why am I here? Why am I talking about a game I wasn't necessarily that excited about? Why did I play it? Well, first, mods, of course. Bethesda's games are notorious for their mods, something ironic because it's not solely tied to Bethesda themselves, despite attempts on their part. Second, their games are also just a blast to cheat in. That's right, your boy cheats in games sometimes when he feels like it. Not often, honestly, but Bethesda games, they almost feel like they encourage it. No regrets. Third, I didn't say I was entirely averse to Starfield because I wasn't, and I'm not. I did fork over the cash to buy it, after all. I just wasn't foaming at the mouth for the latest Bethesda Softworks title. Ultimately, none of this semi-rambling preamble is important because I assume you're not here for that. You're here for the game and finding out, as the title of this video suggests, is Starfield worth it? The game begins a bit unlike Bethesda's other titles in that it's actually pretty short for a Bethesda opening. It took me around an hour and a half, excluding 20 minutes in the character creator, but including my dicking around after leaving the first planet. Take that away and it's probably closer to 40 minutes. Leagues ahead of Fallout 3, starting with your entire childhood in Fallout 4, leading with nuclear Armageddon ruining an otherwise average day in the life of a lawyer and soldier couple. Starfield opened with me mining rocks on the planet Vectera under the supervision of Lynn and the guidance of Heller. But despite how boring that sounds, it's not actually that lame, since it lets me start my new interstellar rock collection.
Come on. Okay, take it easy. You were out cold. No physical damage. Mentally, the jury's still out. You know who you are? New recruit for Argos Extractors? Ring any bells? Any of this look familiar?
What really surprised me here in this character creation menu is that some of these options can actually change some things in dialogue. Nothing too extravagant, but some do offer dialogue options in the future, and a couple can actually change gameplay. Again, not in an especially major way, though it should be noted that some might be beneficial in ways that their trait descriptions don't necessarily showcase that well. Wanted, Kid Stuff, and Hero Worshipper are probably the most gameplay affecting. Though in my case I only went with the first two and decided that alien DNA experimentation is something that I would probably do myself as a spacefaring former bounty hunter. Wanted, 6 other assumably unrelated bounty hunters on the player's ass every so often, and kid stuff means sending money home to the folks every so often, which is almost negligible in consideration of the fact that 1 or 2 lootable cred sticks can cover the costs. Hero Worshipper only serves to remind me that I need to buy and play Oblivion fully at some point. Post-character creation, I leave with Lynn and Heller to meet the man who contracted this extraction, one Barrett of the scientifically minded group Constellation. Unfortunately, for anyone who isn't plot relevant, he was hounded by the Crimson Fleet, a group of relatively organized pirates looking for the assumed loot on board the Frontier, the ship Barrett and Bosco, his robotic companion, arrived in. They're dispatched pretty easily, though not without some issue. Leaving Vectera is an option now, but the Frontier still has its reputation, and there are other Crimson Fleet members that buy into that gossip, though not for much longer. And that's it. That's the end of the opening, even the bit where I dealt with the remaining Crimson Fleet pirates, though I'm not sure that's something that technically has to be done. From here, I can head out to effectively anywhere, but in this case specifically, it's probably a good idea to head to Jemison and check out the Lodge, the Constellation headquarters at New Atlantis. New Atlantis is a place clearly visually designed to appear bigger than it actually physically is. It's apparently so big that I would need to board a transit system between some of its areas, or so you would believe. I need the transit to travel from the spaceport to any of the other 3 districts, those being the residential, commercial, and massed districts, but once I'm in any of those 3, I can pretty easily walk to the remaining 2. You'll also notice that somehow the commercial district has less shops than the residential district, no idea why, but it does annoy me, and I know you might be thinking that I should probably check the map to make absolutely certain of that statement, but there's a rather serious flaw in that idea. The maps in Starfield are just the fucking worst. Look, I can get not having maps for the procedurally generated areas of the game, though whether or not that's something acceptable when indie titles with full procedural generation have entirely fleshed out maps, all while having a significantly smaller budget and in all likelihood less dev time, is entirely up for debate. New Atlantis isn't procedurally generated though, it's handcrafted, specifically designed. That excuse doesn't work. And unfortunately, this is a consistent problem across the entire game. The map is always relatively the same. There might be some slight elevation differences, but always these dots and points of interest that don't go into anything more specific than a name, a vague idea for what can be found there based on an icon and a general location. Even in New Atlantis, there's only one building that's specifically marked, the Lodge itself. AAA map design for you. There's some that say that they'll add proper city maps in a future patch, but like, come on, this is inexcusably horrendous. It's either outright bad design or just lazy, and regardless of which, I hate it. It's not like I can talk with the NPCs about it either. I can't bring it up with Sarah, she's worried about where Barrett went and why do I have pronouns and if I saw anything weird when I touched the rock. So far, it just looks like my mining gig turned out to be a bit more strenuous than I at first believed. As a result of ignoring John Hurt's life lesson of don't touch space shit, I've been roped into Constellation search for the rest of these fancy rocks that they call artifacts, so named because of course they would call them that. Sarah mentions that she already had a lead on another artifact, so away we go, which in turn lets me explain the primary loop this game has to offer. Sarah's lead takes me to a UC recruiter who says that a member of theirs, a Vanguard volunteer by the name of Moara, has what could be an artifact somewhere in the Sol system, which means Sarah and I are going to have to head to Sidonia to search for him more directly. A bartender there says that the info we need can be bought by paying for Moara's tab, which is necessary since he has seemingly gone missing. Sarah's help lowers the tab's price slightly, I neglect the persuasion option for now, and Jack reveals more specifically that Moara was last seen talking about Venus. Just off-world Venus, we come across a satellite beacon that we must sneak up to get its data. Well, I say must, but I don't think it's actually technically necessary. It's also the one and only time in my entire playthrough where I was sneaky with my ship. The data itself leads to an abandoned Nova Galactic star yard orbiting Earth's moon. We arrive, hailing it nets only static, and then we dock. Here is where we actually enter the primary gameplay loop, which boils down to clicking on bodies in the hopes that the bodies stop moving. For now, anyway, there aren't too many frills in the flesh, and this is mostly exclusive to space combat. Once everything ceased movement, it's time to loot, and the game has some interesting, depending on how you define the term, ideas as it relates to that. Weapons and most important equipment comes in rarities, and each rarity has between 1 and 3 modifiers corresponding to the level of rarity a piece of equipment has. These modifiers can affect a number of corresponding attributes, including whether or not it can do increased damage in space or causing a weapon to switch randomly between elemental damage types. There's also different levels of quality on top of that, including calibrated or refined. Personally, I don't find these variations that interesting, apart from some specific unique weapons I'll be coming across later in the game. Still, it's nice that there's some amount of randomness towards your gear beyond what you yourself can do to your weapons, the system for which is itself locked behind the game's skill system. Starfield has a whole suite of weapons and skills at your disposal, most of which you can increase the possibilities of through leveling up and assigning the points you get through leveling towards perks. The skills that increase your options for weapon and spacesuit modification have mastery challenges that require you to modify your weapons and spacesuits a number of times, but there are definitely skills that stand out due to how strangely they're either implemented or how they relate to and interact with each other. Obvious example, sneaking. Two separate skills tied to it, stealth and concealment, both increase your sneaking capabilities, but they, like all skills, have mastery challenges you must complete to unlock the ability to further invest perk points into them. The stealth skill adds a stealth meter, which is important, and generally increases damage while sneaking across the board, so its mastery challenge requires you to do a set amount of sneak attacks of any kind. Each perk point invested into it increases the required amount of attacks, and you can't make any progress in the challenge without investing a point first, but otherwise this is fine. Concealment's mastery challenge requires you to only do melee or unarmed sneak attacks, despite it also mainly affecting sneak attack damage across the board. It affects more than just the mastery challenge's focus would suggest, is what I'm saying, but at least it's tangentially related. Most skills are at the absolute least like this. Tangentially related, but not all. Leadership, for example, is a skill that, among other things, makes companions gain affinity more quickly and allow them to occasionally heal you depending on circumstances. The mastery challenge, you might think, would require you to maybe save them when they're down, have them save you, or be tied to increasing affinity, or even completing a set number of activities with a companion active, but no, it's none of that. You run. I'm not joking. What the fuck? The ship-related perks have a similarly strange issue. The piloting skill does three things: increase maneuverability of your ship, allow you to use thrusters, and increase the rank of ships that you're capable of piloting, from A class to B class to C class. Starship design increases the amount of potential modules you can attach to your ship. These modules and segments, however, can be of a different class than you are capable of piloting, which in turn means that you might not be able to use the benefits of the skill you have invested into. The best part is that I was able to max out the Starship design skill, but not the piloting skill in my first playthrough. I have fallen victim, do not do the same. You might also notice that I've got my scanner up pretty constantly. I'm a loot goblin, and don't like missing things, and the scanner highlights all kinds of shit in the environment. It's best to use when it comes to scanning resources planet-side, but the issue there is that resources can be bought hand over fist from vendors, so marking a resource on a planet for future potential mining, whether personally or via an outpost, is a conscious choice to make life more tedious. I say as if I don't constantly take plenty of opportunities to mine in a cave I just so happen to be inside. Investigating the Star Yard also showcases that our target isn't here, again. And the Goose Chase continues to Neptune, where I get my first proper taste of ship combat. And I do mean a taste. I'm not allowed to destroy Moar's ship on account of the fact that he's still alive and on board, which means I have to disable it instead. It's a feature I like and can lead to me adding some future ships to my fleet, whether to sell or keep for myself. So now we've got another fancy rock, which naturally means that it's time to head home, back to the lodge. I also want to apologize for this next part. Normally I would use GeForce Experience, but for some reason it wasn't allowing me to record past this point in my playthrough, so I tried using OBS, something I've only ever used twice before, for Diablo and Tactics Ogre. This was a mistake. Thankfully I was able to use another better recording software after a certain point that will now be the backup in case GeForce Experience similarly fucks up again. But for the next few minutes my footage might look just a little bit inconsistent. Sorry about that. Starting off, this crappy recording is talking to Sarah about her recent escapades, and she happens to mention two things of interest. First, it might be a good idea to go and get Barrett, who I left behind on the planet where I, first touched the special rock. Second, it also might be a good idea to pay a visit to the Eye, a constellation satellite above Jemison, and meet with former space pirate Vladimir Sal. The Eye is the key to, among other things, getting more artifacts. But of course, there's a bit of a hitch when it comes to that.
Hate to pull the worried old man act on you, but I'm an old man, and I'm worried.
I like Vlad, he's great, second only to the one he's worried about. However, before getting to either Barrett or Andrasia, I decided to stop to grab an artifact along the way. In this case, it's in a cave underneath a relatively abandoned Mybridge Pharmaceuticals lab. Only relatively abandoned because of all the spacers that have turned this outpost into their home. Not enough to stop me, though. Interestingly, the deceased body of Scott Mybridge himself lies beneath the outpost, inside the cave that the artifact can be found in. On him is the text log, "One Last Bet," acting as a cautionary tale. Truly a sad, tear-jerking short snippet of a man giving in to the sunk cost fallacy and never knowing exactly how close he actually was to something truly astounding. This is unlike Andrasia, whom we find in a mine just kicking ass. Seeing her little interactions with Sarah while we're here is nice, and the fact that she, like myself, is all kinds of sneaky is a big bonus towards her joining me in literally every single mission I can have her alongside in. In the mine are a bunch of ecliptic mercs, who, like the Spacers, are not long for this world. One more artifact down. Next is Barrett, whom we last saw in Vectera. We don't see him when we get back, though. He got kidnapped by Crimson Fleet after we left, go figure. They've got Heller too, and once more we enter into an hour-and-a-half long wild goose chase that eventually leads to rescuing an injured Heller and an unharmed Barrett. The man was just chatting it up with Matsuro here, while Heller was, in need of medical attention. Thankfully, there's not that much else in these crappy OBS recordings. Just some gear modification with no cheating whatsoever in preparation for the next story mission. And I know what you're thinking. Story. Are you gonna put up a spoiler tag at some point? Yeah, I'm gonna say this now. I think Starfield, as a game, is alright. There's some solid gameplay choices throughout. The variety of options towards upgrading your gear is nice, and there's some intriguing elements to the lore. But there are also some downright bizarre gameplay choices, an inventory that's a pain in the ass to manage sometimes, an atrocious map, and some disappointing story beats, some of which serve only to raise questions that the game in no way intends to answer. The companions you can have are generally a mixed bag of either useful and interesting, or mechanically worthless and boring. And the quests tied to the main story feel repetitive at times, but this could in turn contribute towards the more standout missions feeling even more interesting than they would otherwise. Most repetitive is the constant walking from point to point, and even the whole artifact gathering thing, and the RNG procedural generation meant to help mitigate that feeling of repetition itself has some quirks. The music throughout is generally good, and hell, the presentation, save for maybe the at this point well-known lacking facial animations in pretty much every Bethesda game, is nice. I don't know if it's worth the baseline $70 price tag, honestly. The one price point I do like on Steam is the $10 soundtrack, but outside of that, not so much. That's my verdict. By the by, it's fine. It's a fine game. I'm sure a mixture of future patches and handcrafted mods will truly cause this game to ascend past its Bethesda bonds. But right now, I'm gonna say that if you're looking to buy it, I'd wait for a sale. But there's still some more I want to talk about, so if you're worried about spoilers, well, now's your time to get off the ride. It is all spoilers ahead. I'll see you later. Everyone else, I won't lie, not much is gonna change from here. I'm still gonna gloss over some of the more specific details relating to characters, and a lot of the game is still mostly just walking from point to point, and I'm not sure if even a new gameplay mechanic introduced just now would change that. Oh no, wait. Vlad happened to mention something about a new kind of anomaly, whose signature matched one of an artifact that we already obtained. But this one was different, bigger, so out of place that it even fucks with the scanner's HUD, which is conveniently how I locate it while on the surface of Procyon 3, which is good since the slight fog here and the large distance difference makes it difficult to spot the temple jutting out of the ground. Inside that temple is the worst, I don't know what to call it, puzzle? Yeah, let's use that. This puzzle is the worst thing that this game has to offer, so bad that I felt compelled to segment it away into its own sub-chapter. In fact, you know what, here, this is the whole thing, uninterrupted.
Are they moving? They seem to react to us.
Now I know what you're thinking. Story, that doesn't seem like it took too long. 2, maybe 3 minutes, if that, right? Well, imagine doing this for every temple corresponding to every artifact you have. Imagine you always need to connect with exactly 5 of these spots. Imagine that sometimes their hitboxes can be a bit wonky. Imagine these spots have increasingly shorter times between when they shift positions with each spot that you come in contact with. Imagine these spots shifting to the opposite side of wherever you happen to be more than once. Imagine you have both your companion and the giant spinning discs in the middle to block you. Imagine that Vlad only tells you about these temples individually, so you have to go back to the eye every single time you've cleared one. Imagine that you have to search for the temple on every planet visually through the scanner's HUD glitches or just plain eyesight. Imagine that these temples are located on planets or in systems that you just haven't visited yet, and thus are forced to sit through all the related ship animations for things like grab jumping and landing on the planet. All those loading screens, all that pointless "this is where it is" dialogue, all that floaty jump through the hoop style gameplay, all that repetition is just not fun. And yes, I know that this is strictly speaking technically optional. You don't have to get all the powers available to you, but you've done something incredibly wrong if your players actively go out of their way to not engage with a core gameplay mechanic due to what that gameplay mechanic actually is. And this is something that the game will remind you about doing in your missions menu and with the starborn enemies you come across. Getting a bit ahead of myself with that last bit, but the point is that this is tedious and not fun. Still, being able to go home and brag about my new space powers is neat, even if the power I got isn't that useful. Just in time to show Sam, though, yet another as-yet unintroduced Constellation member with a daughter named Cora. See, he's got an artifact for me to track down, and as I'm interested in those both personally and professionally, I'm inclined to join him to Aquila City. Gangsters holding up the bank are dealt with. I convinced Sam's old man to let us grab a map, and we grab the artifact without too much hassle from the Shaw Gang's hideout, after which we defend that hideout alongside the Shaw Gang themselves because persuasion is a fun skill to have. I'm not kidding, by the way. You should invest in that skill when you can. I then spent the next 14 hours just fucking around. In no specific order. I start building a base in Nesui along a beach, scare away some mercenaries who happen to want my bounty, modify the frontier to be better than it was in almost every conceivable way, clear out a couple outposts as well as a space casino above the same planet my base is located on, visited my parents, got more powers from a handful of temples, visited Vlad's house, crossed the space equivalent of a teacher taking her students out on a field trip, as well as coming across this cool derelict where the gravity is constantly fluctuating from standard Earth level to none at all. It was just fun, full stop. Oh yeah, there was also my favorite single enemy in the game at one of the temples I visited, the Terramorph. I just love the way it looks. What else? Oh, right. This. Okay, I can't help but notice that it seems to stun lock me. Where's my med? Are you kidding me? What? Oh no. Alright, fine. If you're curious what's happening here, the game saves when you level up, and of course I happened to level up right when I was about to meet death by way of alien bug-related blunt force trauma to the head and body. No, I totally didn't cheat to get past this because I was too lazy to load an older autosave, don't worry about it. I was able to entirely legitimately make it back to the lodge in one piece and go on Walter's mission, a riveting tale full of the unfortunate, though sometimes necessary violence that can go hand in hand with corporate espionage in a universe such as this one. Except, the problem is solved at the end, mostly through conversation. I say that like it's a bad thing, but you know, I like having the option to talk through a problem in an RPG, even though the whole gamified aspect of dialogue here isn't as liked as that. Something I like even more is that the plot is finally beginning to actually be a plot. See, up until this point, the most we've really had is character introductions and the quote-unquote mystery surrounding the artifacts and the powers you get from the artifacts. 28 hours after starting the game. But, you know, technically at least half of that is just me doing random shit, so it's not my fault for half of it. I left Neon with the artifact in tow, alongside Walter and my other crew aboard the Frontier, but we're stopped before we can actually leave for Jemison by someone. If their ship is any indication, these artifacts and their temples are a bit more complicated than just funny visions and comic book superpowers. The stranger claims to be something called Starborn. If Bethesda could remove itself from Skyrim's shadow, that would be cool. Either way, the guy finds us unworthy of wielding the artifacts, threatens our life if we don't hand our artifact over, and explodes, refusing to elaborate further. So these Starborn are interesting, right? They've got some kind of tech that, at least on the surface level, far outclasses our own, as well as a seemingly fundamental understanding of what these artifacts even are. But it's not like all of the information we've gained isn't already known. Oh, so there are people in our way we may or may not have to fight with in order to gain the artifacts? That doesn't really change anything. It's just, that's something that's already happening. It's just a new name in the mix. The mystery here is who these Starborn are, why they're also after the artifacts, what's with that ship, the Helix, and what other tech might they have on their side. That's the thing, none of us at Constellation really know. We can theorize, we can guess, but the only surefire way to actually know for certain is to continue gathering these artifacts and getting new powers from their temples. So that's what I do. Now, my first stop is this planet called RNA-4B. In this case, the artifact is underneath a relatively abandoned Mybridge Pharmaceuticals lab. Only relatively abandoned because of all the ecliptic mercenaries that have turned this outpost into their home, huh? Deja vu. There's no way, right? I mean, they're mercenaries, not spacers. I mean, still not enough to stop me, and... oh wait, that's Scott Mybridge. Procedural generation is a joke. Well, this is it. We're in the endgame now, so there's only another 15 hours until the credits roll. I'm not even going to bother working out the exact math as to how much of that is the artifact temple hunt. Good idea to repair the eye in the meantime, though. Better safe than sorry, right? The next artifact to grab belongs to this eccentric collector named Petrov. A mission of so much importance and so much potential danger, with so many lasting ramifications that it takes me about 10 minutes to get the artifact without killing anyone.
Wait! I surrender! I surrender! Don't kill me!
They will still treat me like I did, though, going so far as to put a bounty on my head, but hey, that won't get in my way. Home's waiting, after all. Oh. Okay, grabbing the artifact should be priority 1, sticking with Sarah to make sure that the Starborn asshat doesn't nab it. If he gets them, whatever happened on the eye is pointless. He doesn't like that. That's okay, that's fine. I was expecting a little resistance. Maybe not this much resistance. Jemison itself will serve as the escape route. The fact that we need to take public transportation will in no way prove detrimental to the escape. We're in the ship. The Eye, Vlad, Andreja, Barrett, Sam, Cora. They need our help. The Hunter, of course, needs to get one last word in. The ass just sitting there in relative safety on board his Scorpius.
I have to admit, this has been interesting. What are you going to do with the armillary now? I wonder. I was merely taking the shortest path to my destination. But now, I think I'll just kick back, enjoy the long road. There's a greater purpose to all this. You might have a larger role than I realized. Mistake on my part. Keep collecting the artifacts. We'll meet again. Maybe you'll glimpse the unity yet.
Armillary? Unity? What? Yeah, you run away, you cryptic Starborn fuck. Oh, we're too late. Andreja, Vlad, Barrett, Cora, they're all fine. Sam isn't. He's gone. If only I could have gotten here sooner. If only we hadn't been so hellbent on getting these damn artifacts. If only I spent any amount of time with him outside of that one story mission. this moment would be so much more impactful. So I know some of the details as to how this mission is supposed to work out. It, in theory, makes you choose between the two highest affinity constellation companions. The issue, in my case, is that apart from when I literally physically could not have her as a companion, I have exclusively traveled with Andrasia throughout the entire playthrough. Nice moment, impact lacking, but I'll chalk that up to circumstance. Cora hates me now, though. Something's been bugging me too, some new terms to question: armillary, unity. Now the armillary is probably the artifacts all acting in conjunction, swirling around each other in what looks like an armillary sphere. The unity is not so obvious though. I don't have a point of reference for what that could be. Mateo might though. In 3 conversations with various religious figures later, we have a lead, the pilgrim, an apparently historical figure left a trail to follow, and follow I do, which leads further to a location in space. Finally, some answers.
Hello. Again. Do you remember the Emissary, perhaps? And their ship, the Helix? I believe they ambushed you above Neon and demanded that artifact you worked so hard to gain.
Thank you for the stellar introduction. Your success is unprecedented. Before you came, we were just discussing how continued use of force against you is unwise. Yes, we did. We are not a monolithic people. The Starborn are individuals. Some are united in cause. Others are in it for themselves.
We are all in it for ourselves. Some of us are just more honest. The Emissary threatened your ship, demanded you hand over your artifact. How is that so different from what I did?
We needed to warn you off. Every encounter with one of our kind could spell disaster.
For whom, exactly? I say whoever can collect them should. Yes. Let's talk about what really matters.
The Unity. You are on the path to it. It is a place, a gateway. It is where we were reborn.
So, I gotta say, this part is more awkward than I thought. Hiding my face was way easier.
Oh, okay. I probably should have expected that, honestly. So the Emissary was the one who threatened Constellation earlier, and his ship exploded? I don't know, it's kind of hard to tell, it was just off screen, but here he is anyway. And he's Sam, too, so cool, I guess. Again, spent like no time with him, so it's still not as impactful.
Countless times.
I was also human once. But what does it matter who or what I was when eternity is within your grasp?
The hunter is Aquilus. Okay, but those notes we came across earlier in following the Pilgrim's Path, they make it seem like it was someone already from this universe, and Aquilus is... Aquilus, he's around still. Weird. I'm sure someone somewhere on the internet has an answer for that. Also, no real answers. It boils down to, hey, there's something you should see first, so I'm gonna do that, and also hear my favorite music in the entire game. It's so chill, I love it.
Do you understand now why I asked you to come here? The artifacts unlocked the secret of interstellar travel. At the cost of Earth.
An easy trade, honestly. Why have one world when you can have all the settled systems?
Every grav drive in the settled systems was built on technology that came from an artifact that was discovered on Mars. But these early drives shook the gravity field surrounding Earth. Eventually, the atmosphere started to slowly sputter away into space. That is why Earth is uninhabitable. The artifact gave the scientists a greater understanding of time and space, but not the wisdom to see where that would lead.
The settled systems wouldn't exist without the artifacts, in other words. We owe what happened here in NASA a great debt.
So, what Emissary Sam... Emissam? No, that doesn't sound as good. What Emissary Sam wants me to know is that the grab drives were invented, with the heaviest air quotes possible, by Victor Isa. He saw, or met, a multiversal version of himself who explained how to make grab drives, and with the way these logs suggest events occur, Victor here knew that this would cause the Earth's atmosphere to sputter away, which would also mean that he knew that with a little more time and study instead of rushing towards space travel, this could have been avoided. He knew there would be a problem and chose not to fix it prior to it being a problem. Emissary Sam here says this like it's some gotcha moment. Oh, look at what these artifacts can do, and Hunter Aquilus is all, fair trade, Earth for all of space, you're both idiots. Victor choosing, despite the foreknowledge he had, to seemingly not even attempt to correct the problem prior to the issue arising is at fault. Not his touching the artifact, not his glancing blow with the multiverse. It was his not actually using that gained knowledge responsibly. Oh, but then he couldn't guarantee space travel for humanity. Yeah, no, he still has that information, right? But maybe that alternate version of Victor didn't tell him the side effects. Why would he not do that? In what way does he benefit in not telling another version of himself that there might be a little bit of a problem? And it's not a fair trade. What are you talking about? It'd only be fair if all involved were aware of the circumstances that those affected could directly benefit with the knowledge of the cost. I don't think you know what fair means, Hunter. Nothing is certain here, but honestly, I think this is kind of dumb. The game treats this reveal as if it should change how I view the artifacts and these two Starborn who want them, but it doesn't. The Hunter was and still is comedically an asshole. This doesn't change how I view him. The Emissary using this as his basis, at least relative to this conversation, for why no one should get the armillary without his say-so, comes off as equally stupid and arguably even egotistical, since the Hunter actually makes a good point here. At least the Hunter's honest, lest we forget, the Emissary's first encounter was entirely threats to hand over an artifact. No explanation as to how it could be dangerous, just hand it over or else. It's hard to be seen as some judge that stops bad things from happening when you're actively threatening for bad things to happen. If you want peace, prepare for war. Yeah, no, if you actually wanted worthy people to go through the Unity, you wouldn't just blacklist everyone without doing any research on those searching for the artifacts. You would vet people that you would want to go through. You might even guide them towards the artifacts in a beneficial way. You wouldn't just threaten them to gain the artifacts yourself. And that's what it comes down to. The Emissary believes that only specific people should enter the Unity. Specific people that only the Emissary chooses, and the fact that the arrival of the Starborn was marked with their threats I'm sure is entirely coincidental. The Hunter believes that anyone who has the power to gather the armillary and enter the Unity should do so. He also just happens to believe in absolute pursuit of the armillary himself, so it often means clashing with him more often than not. Neither of these people seemed appealing to side with, so I don't side with either of them. I like that that's something I can do. Unfortunately, the only thing left to the story now is gathering the remaining artifacts and then meeting them at a specific temple. Something around 7-ish hours later, and also my favorite mission in this entire game, which I'm not going to spoil since I'm already doing that for the rest of the story, and I arrive with no companion, by choice for once, for the first and only time in this game for a story mission. There are Starborn blocking the path, each with a unique power to match one that I already have, but none of them are as deadly as me. None of them are as lethal or as dangerous. None have spent entire lifetimes visiting every temple that this game has to offer, apparently. No. Forward. That's all there is now. Forward. Then below, beneath the base, to the final temple. And now all that stands between me and true ascension is one last Starborn, Guardian Fion. But just like the rest, just like all of his Starborn allies, just like the fallen dead behind me, Fion can't— what the fuck is that? cheatsy bitches. They knew that they couldn't beat me in a one-on-one fight, and the reason the dead shtick earlier wasn't working in their favor since they were only raising formerly deceased ecliptic idiots who I've been fighting the entire game. So they brought in the only force conceivably strong enough to stop me. Me. I'm not even mad. That's actually really cool. I like that a lot. Starfield doesn't play around too much with the whole multiverse thing that often, but when they successfully pull it off, it turns out like this. Good shit, Bethesda. Genuinely. No notes. No more enemies, no more Starborn to block the way. There's only me, the temple, and them. They turn out to not be as tough a fight as me, of course, but that's because we don't fight. I just talk them out of it. Like I said, persuasion. Get it.
Well, here we are, ready to kill each other for the artifact. As always.
I'm sorry it's come to this.
More talking? I'm a little disappointed.
No. Wait. I want to hear this.
Fine. The answer is trying something new. Appealing to my nobility. Huh. It's been a while. That certainly does sound different. Well, I don't know about either of you, but it's been a while since I felt this old.
Perhaps it's time to put this all to an end.
At least this once. Here, take the artifacts before I come to my senses.
That's it. I have them all. All that's left is moving forward. Greener pastures. Sam's dead, but maybe he won't be wherever I end up next. I mean, I will have to leave behind Andrasia and everyone else at Constellation, but we did it. They can potentially follow after me. Now, it's my understanding that there is no guarantee that they'll end up in the same universe as yours truly, but if I know them, well, I wouldn't really call that a stop sign so much as a speed bump. I don't know if I'll be coming back to this game for DLC or anything like that. I can't lie. I am naturally hopeful for potential mods since I've got this game-breaking energy built up from this nearly 47-hour playthrough, but as it stands, there isn't anything too exciting on that front or in the game right now, for now at least. Time will tell if and when that'll change, but not right now. I mean, my last recording date was the 20th of November. Steam says the last date I played was the 24th. At time of writing, it is early morning December 1st. It's just an example for how long I've really thought about this. I don't see myself playing this again anytime soon. I can't fault people for playing this game more than me, and I can't fault people for playing it less. I wouldn't say my money was wasted, but I can't say I was fully satisfied with my time spent here. Mixed bag of feelings. That's Bethesda. Man, I'm really depressed now for some reason. This has been Starfield. I'll see you later. Story out.